Amazing. So here we go. Another episode of the Becoming Cosmically You podcast. And here we have Abigail, who's got an amazing van. So we were just talking about the van life. And so over to you, Abigail. Let our readers and listeners know where you're from and what you do.
Yeah, thank you. My name's Abigail. I am the CEO of Hearts Unleashed and also a host of the Hearts Unleashed podcast. I'm an author, I and a publisher, and I don't know where to start. In fact, I'm just kind of listening before speaking, and I've been traveling for years now. I'm from Indiana, just outside of Chicago, and I moved to California in 2017, and here we are in real time in 2024. So I've been on the move for the past, 7, 8 years, and every, the life on the road has brought me closer to being cosmically myself. I was
Mm,
born and raised in Indiana, therefore and to nobody's fault, growing up, you just grow up inside of your 3D conditioning. And so you learn who you are from who you're raised by and the culture you're raised in. And so the more I traveled, the more I was exposed to, the more I became interested in, and the more of myself I discovered. And so I grew up, I got my education degree. And so I was a PE and health teacher. I was a basketball coach. I was a basketball player for a lot of my life. And as I left education, I went from teaching gym to gym management, but then I was introduced to life coaching, which was a language I didn't know was being spoken in the world, and of vulnerability, rawness, realness, saying what was really going on for us. And it just blew my world open about what was possible. And the more I got into the coaching industry, the more I was led towards my spiritual breakthrough. So I was working on a lot of things that weren't working for me in my life, which then led to the fact that, my spiritual nature was influenced by religion,
mm,
religious. I wouldn't necessarily say religious trauma. However, the issues I unconsciously sort of took with religion and God and spirit and universe and like all of it, to where I had contracted and then opened back up.
mm,
The more that my gifts came online, being clairsentient, being able to hear into the thing that's not being said, the thing that's not being felt, being able to feel and hear and see and sense those and not doing anything with them was causing me a lot of turmoil, anxiety, internal pain and angst. And then learning to express that myself also helped me to tap into people who weren't expressing it and being able to offer that as a service and guidance and just a form of love, truly. So
mm.
that's the most concise I'd love to share in the moment.
Wow, I love that. So how did you like transition to living in a van? I know we're going a bit off tangent there, but was
Yeah,
that like a
totally.
conscious decision
Yeah.
or yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. So I was living in 2017, when I first moved out to California, I moved in with family, my grandfather to be specific, and that was very helpful because I didn't know life on the West Coast. And so that was a great transition. However, after a year, as a 30-something-year-old woman, you're like, okay, I'm ready to be, out on my own. And so I moved to Arizona, I moved to Oregon, and I was still finding like I had just written my book. So I was really relating to myself as on book tour. Like I'm just forever on book tour now. And
Yeah.
and so it went from living with family, living with like friend situations, roommate situations, to then I was in a relationship and we actually hit the road. We did 35 states in 5 months in a camper and SUV situation. And we
Wow.
were both coaches, both our coaches, and uh got to go host events, visit clients all over the country. It was like an entire perimeter trip. And that was amazing and also highly intense because 35 states in 5 months is a lot of movement. And so that was interesting. And then when that relationship ended, I actually went to Costa Rica for 2 months to visit there. I had never traveled solo internationally. Costa Rica was just calling to me for like years at that point. And then while I was in Costa Rica, it was a deeply restful period. And I kept getting visions of traveling in a van next. And I was like,
Mm.
oh man, my ego was like insecure about it. Like, can I afford it? Or what's next? Or how am I going to do that? I don't have a van yet. I'm going to buy one built. Am I going to build one? There was a lot of questions to it, but the vision was very clear. So when I got back, I actually did a 2-week road trip in my Jeep and was living full Jeep life, a car camping life, just to see if that is what I was really feeling. And got back to California. I was talking to my bookkeeper about it, and she's like, "Oh, yeah, you could just put some money here and do this." Like she was super optimistic about it, and it really kind of set it off. And I started van shopping. I bought a completely empty, brand new van. I'm not a mechanic. I built this, but I'm not a mechanic, so I wasn't very interested in an older vehicle. So I bought a brand new vehicle, built it out, spent 4 months building what you see here. Obviously, I know our listeners are audio, but you could tune into my YouTube channel where I'm building it. It's called The Adventures of Abigail. And so I'm building the van in that on that channel, and I love it so much. And so at this point I've had this van for going on 2 years, and it's just been so spectacular to get to set it up. Life in the camper really informed how I built the van, and it's built exactly for me. It's so customized. It has a big long work desk for interviews exactly like this, and the color scheme. It's just really meant to be a sanctuary for me and my work.
Wow, I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah,
Like I was saying before we came live, we've got two children and they would absolutely love it to
yeah,
be full time. I think we'd need like a massive RV though. I've
yeah,
seen I've seen some of the ones online that you could buy. You have like a little car that goes underneath there, and I'm like,
yeah,
yeah, we'd need one of those with like a proper lounge and a kitchen, and
yeah,
I think I could see myself doing that. It's funny. I had a client once as well who sold everything to buy
yeah,
a van and do the van life, and it's so freeing, isn't it? It's so
yes,
yeah. We
it
we
is.
um we sometimes visit like these kind of places where they're just like a field, with an open air swimming pool, and they have got a bar and a restaurant and stuff, but just being out in the open and
Yes.
making a fire to make your dinner, it's just
Yeah,
definitely brings back that nostalgia part of my childhood where
yeah,
we were like climbing trees and the feral and you
yeah,
know
yeah.
all the
My
things that
favorite,
childhood should be. I
yeah,
love
getting
it.
out into nature and waking up in nature, just being able to open the back doors. Like to me, a part of my journey has been slowing down. I'm a high
Mm,
achiever, high performer, all of that. Living in the van life has like it started before that, but a slow morning and a thoughtful day, and even like you said, starting a fire to make your food, or even little things in the van, everything is meticulous because
mm,
you're living tiny. And so like I'm a minimalist by nature too. That's a very it's less distraction, let's say, less to
mm.
take care of. And it's not the life for everybody. You got to find out where you're going to sleep every night. You got to find out where your water's coming from. Like there's certain things like that, but it's truly rewarding.
That's amazing. I love that. And yeah, our caravan is tiny, tiny as well. It's got a king size bed, but I don't know how we all fit on it when we sleep
Yeah.
there. But there's something quite beautiful about all just cramming in the
Yeah.
same bed and
Yeah.
just like kind of like just getting on with it, whatever you've got. I think it brings about like a new level of gratitude.
Totally.
Um, we've been thinking about oh, my cats are fighting behind us, sorry. We've been thinking about getting a bigger one, but actually, when my kids are still young, I'm like, I love sleep. but at
Yeah.
the same time, I'm like so squashed in with them that I'm just
Yep.
trying to enjoy them being so little at the same time.
Yeah. Totally. It's the simple things and being able to enjoy them is really magical.
Yeah, and like simple things like, I mean, it's quite cold in the UK at the moment. Our season hasn't really opened. In a couple of months' time, it'll be kind of summer, but nothing like you guys get in the US.
Yeah.
But we even like just getting up in the middle of the night to walk across a field to go to the toilet, for me, it's just somehow just magical because you're so
Yeah.
connected to the
Yeah.
earth.
Yeah. Completely. I could not agree more.
Oh, beautiful. So let us know about your work. Like, what do you do for people? How did you get into coaching? You said you were a
Hmm.
basketball coach.
Yeah.
So how did you kind of transition, if you like,
Yeah.
and what was the interest there?
Yeah, when I was managing a gym, I actually hired a gal and she was way overqualified for a part-time job. She had a master's and then I saw a life coach on there and I sat her down and I was like, "What are you doing here?" She's like, "Well, I just quit my job and I just became a life coach and I just need some income while I am, building my life coaching business." And I thought that was brilliant. I love that. And about 2 weeks after hiring her, we're sitting at the front desk together and she's like, I'd really love for you to come check out my life coaching program. Everything you're already saying I'm being taught to say everything you're already saying. Like
Mm.
you just live it. Like you just I have it. And so I went, I observed this year-long program. It was a 2-hour observation. It was a year-long program. I signed on the line like right then and there for a $15,000 program. And it
Wow.
was like it's very much like the rest is history. And it they in that program we call ourselves ontological life coaches, and ontology is the study of the nature of being, like who and how you're being. So who you're being, how you're being, that produces all of the results in your life. It's not about what you do, right? Like 10 people can do the same exact program and come out with 10 varied results, right? Because it
Mm.
has so much to do with how you be. If you be victorious, it's likely you will have victory. If you be defeated, it's likely you will have defeat, right? It's very typical for what we see in people's outcomes. That being said, though, I call myself a life coach for a while, and as I've evolved, it's, that the fit, it's like putting on a shoe that's just doesn't, it's too tight or it's, whatever. And so in the last, 3, 4, 5 years at this point, I call myself a clarity coach. So
Mm.
I help people get clear about who they are, what they want, how to get there, and how to identify and remove what's in the way, because a
Mm.
lot of us know what we want. Well, actually, that's not always true, even. Some people don't know what they want, or they think they want something, but it's probably out of alignment with their true nature, right? We want what's popular, or we want what we've been told to want. We want what we've seen in the world, but most of us haven't even been exposed to what we want yet. And so, to get clear about who we are and our true nature, I often help people define success for them
Mm.
and start to sort of set their point more true north for them.
Mm.
And that's been a magical thing. And the more I've offered being a clarity coach, it's created clarity for me too. So the more that's been offered, I often call myself, depending on the setting, which this is the setting, I call myself a mystic guide and a shadow integration coach, because that's where the real work lies, is integrating the parts of us that we've stifled, that we've hidden, that we feel shameful about. We can't be our full selves if we're not willing to integrate our shadow. And so I work with the totality of a person, and that often means nurturing the parts of us that are wounded, that are hidden, again, that are hidden in the shadow. And so there's a lot more healing work involved in that. So I have a lot of high achievers come to me, and coaching is very much about where you are now to where you want to be. Therapy, on the other hand, is a lot about what's happened and where you've been and how that's, you know, how you feel about that. And that's great and brilliant work. And I think very important work. And I do a lot of healing work in my coaching. But I think something that distinguishes the coaching is I hear you, and then we navigate the past. And now what?
Mm,
Now, where would you like to go? Now, what would you like to happen? What would you like to do about that? And who would you like to be about that? Because life is an endless series of challenges and obstacles that we come across, right? I think it's an illusion for a lot of people that will arrive at some ever enlightened, ever healed place, right?
mm,
Like part of being human, part of be entering the 3D world is also agreeing to the physical constructs and the physical challenges of being in this physical world. And so we're an energetic being that took a human body. And so we get to, for our lifetime, navigate being human and the challenges and emotions and surprises and joys that come with it. And so I really enjoy helping people become their fully energetic being in this human body.
mm. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, my team was saying you're like the bridge. You're
Yeah.
the bridge between the 3D and the metaphysical. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's really super important because I see lots of people getting so carried away with this or that or this or that. And I'm like, actually, it's neither this or that. It
Yeah.
just is, and it's the whole thing. And
Yeah.
it's always about how you're feeling about it or what you're seeing with your eyes, because most of the time most of the information you're fed is complete bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like our mind needs to just take a back seat, and
Yeah.
most of the time, the only person in your way is
Mm.
you, right?
Hmm.
The only person. And I
Totally.
like my team want to go back to the section you said about people what knowing what they want.
Yeah.
I had this as a little mini hit this morning. um, Most people are moving out of expectation for other people, right?
Mm.
Or
Hmm.
what looks good, or what looks good on social media. Like I love social media
Yeah.
with a but after it,
Yeah.
because it breeds this population of people that are always trying to compete with other people or
Yes.
looking for validation or acceptance. I'm like, as soon as you can get to the stage where you're not living your life for what it looks like, but what
Yes.
it feels like to you, that's
Yes.
what it all matters. Like
Yeah.
I rock up in so many different forms, hair done, makeup done, no makeup, no eyelashes, glasses, no glasses. I just drop pajamas. I spend most of my time in my pajamas, if I'm honest,
Yes.
but I don't care what people think because I'm like,
Yeah.
I feel good just
Yeah.
rocking around in my pajamas with my little wee turban, as one of my
Yeah.
clients calls it, and I think that's what we really have to educate people on, that
Yes.
success isn't those external factors. Because, yeah, my team was reminding me, you said you work with overachievers,
Yeah.
and oftentimes their success is as a mask, it's an
Yeah.
identity,
Yeah.
and that is almost more fragile than the person on the opposite end of the spectrum
Mm.
who has no success and has no money. you know
Hmm.
th- there's no kind of like polarity.
Hmm.
People who experience trauma who are super successful, and
Hmm.
sometimes more trauma, right? Because nobody questions you when you've got like a shit ton of money in the bag and you've got a shit ton of followers. Everyone goes, oh, poor you. Like my team are just talking about the Justin Bieber incident, at the
Hmm.
moment, with the whole mask coming away on paedophilia in the 3D world. And he told people that he was lonely despite the success he had. But
Mm.
the amount of people won't even acknowledge that because he's
Right.
super successful. And
Right.
I think that has to change. We have to find a deep, deep compassion for
Yeah.
everybody where they're at in their journey, because you can't say, oh, just because you've got a shit ton of money, that you
Mm.
don't deserve compassion, you don't deserve help, because oftentimes those people need the most help, actually.
Yeah. I really love being alive at this time because we're prioritizing mental health and emotional health. I
Mm,
find those to be very different. And that, if you look in history pretty much anywhere, especially in like Hollywood or show business, that mental and emotional health is so far low on the priority list. Excuse me. And that it's becoming such a more mainstream conversation. Like I love being online and social media and listening to the conversation because you can hear the emotional intelligence conversation and language entering common expression and common language. And I just deeply appreciate it because people who I never expected would have, educated themselves in this area or gained knowledge about how to express themselves are slowly, and probably slower than I'd like sometimes. I too get anxious and eager for the whole world to be healed and people to be well, and it is happening, and you can see it when you look for it. You always find what you're looking for. So my lens is very tuned in and focused on the wellness of everybody.
yeah. And you can see it with the new souls that are coming in as well. Like my children, for example, they've taught me so much about how to be, and I've been able to guide them on tools and processes and healing methods that I only learnt when I was in my 30s,
Mm,
and they
yeah,
learnt it from like 2 years old. So
exactly.
like oftentimes I remember my daughter the other day, she's 6 years old, she will literally take on anyone. Sometimes I get a bit aggravated with drivers that are dangerous, actually dangerous.
Mm,
And she sat me down and she said, Mommy, I think you need to learn to be a little bit kinder to these people because they're really trying their best. Like you always tell us that you're
yeah,
only trying your best. And I was
yeah.
like, holy shit, I'm being mentored by a 5-year-old. But I allow her because, in learning how to mentor and coach other people at that kind
Hmm.
of age
Yeah,
is so powerful, right? And
yeah.
I don't know how you were brought up, Abigail, but I was brought up in the 80s where you had to be, you were able to be seen but not heard. You had
Mm,
no opinion. You couldn't even voice your opinion. You ate what you were given or you went to bed. We were
yeah.
grounded a lot. We were physically smacked. We were psychologically abused,
Hmm.
sexually abused as well. All of these traumas. And
Yeah,
these children that are coming through, most of them, to the people that have done the work, obviously, they're not
right.
experiencing that. So, like you, the lens I'm already seeing
Yeah.
such a
It's a
beautiful
whole
shift.
different,
Yeah,
whole different world.
yeah.
Yeah, I could not agree more. We have a generation of conscious parents raising conscious children, and we'll see how that all elevates and pans out. But I coach so many parents, and I'm like, be wary of when unconscious parents are are projecting, right? Like they're saving their children from the world they grew up in. And
Mm,
so it's like they haven't experienced that abuse. They haven't experienced
mm,
that trauma. They don't face that threat, right? And so you don't need to raise them to survive something they're not even exposed to. You know what I
mm,
mean? So I see that a lot. And because we're trying, like, I'll never be like my parents, or we end up just like them, or do the exact opposite, or some spectrum in between. But I think we get to raise the humans that were born, not the humans that we're trying to mold and, curate. And so I love that, and it's happening, and we get to teach them great values and then watch them evolve and do what they're going to do with it. I'm so interested in why my throat is so scratchy because we're having such a free-flowing conversation, and I love this. And so I'm sure we're clearing for the collective around, what it's like to be able to speak freely and about these topics and this conversation.
totally. And the thing is around rules, I learned quite very quickly being a mom that, I mean, I've never been one for rules, if I'm honest. If someone tells me to do something and it doesn't feel in alignment, I would always say no. And I got taught from a very young age that I was very stubborn and selfish. And yeah, with my children, usually 9 times out of 10, they make their own decisions about everything, what they eat, what they wear, what we do, who we do it with,
Mm,
and there is sometimes a struggle within that because I'm raising like really independent,
mm.
outspoken little beings
Yeah.
who are going to
Yeah.
take on the world, and I have to like bite my lips sometimes. But
Yeah.
how powerful that they, like you said, will never have to go through many of the traumas that we've had to. Like I see a world where everybody just knows how to heal themselves
Mm,
through stuff.
yeah.
That's what I feel like is my biggest mission for being
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that as well. I teach that in the form of self-regulation. Um, something I had to tie that together. I grew up a highly sensitive person, a highly emotional person. So even before I was ever taught about my natural state of being, it was there, right? And then I was often, we grew up in a non-emotional uh I grew up in a non-emotional home, less emotional, let's say. My father was more emotionally expressed than my mom. My parents were divorced, and so I grew up in my home with my single mom and my sister. And so she just kind of buckled down and got to work and made sure she made a living. And we lived a great life, right?
Mm,
We were never we never needed to want. We were never less than as far as food and warmth and clothing and shelter and sports and plenty of fun things to do and experiences. And though the emotional connection wasn't always there, especially
mm,
as a highly sensitive person. And so it was like, quit crying, or like, what are those tears going to do? Like that's not going to solve the problem. So my mom was just very like, buckle down and get the job done. And
mm,
and for me, that was I'd call it traumatizing, and it wasn't out overt trauma, right? And
mm,
so it wasn't that capital T trauma, sexual abuse, physical abuse, hunger, but it was that lower T trauma where it affected me, and it affected my identity, right? So I
mm,
struggled with that. And for me, I also adapted and morphed to become acceptable, validated. Like my idea of getting love was being approved of. So I knew that's where I became that high achiever. And so
mm,
I often shut down my true nature in order to achieve, in order like to bulldoze my emotions. So where I would have stopped to cry or stayed in bed that day or be more sensitive or feel more, it was more like, oh, put override on and just go. And so
mm,
I learning to stop that, that's how I end up working with high achievers and go-getters is we know how to get what we want. We know how to manifest and go for it. But you can have you kind of said something to this effect earlier. You can have a life that looks good, but if you don't feel good, it
mm,
doesn't effing matter whatsoever.
mm,
And so that is building a house of cards on sand, and it's not effective, and it's definitely not sustainable. You're always one wrong look from breakdown and
mm,
or one minor inconvenience from existential crisis, and it's just not a functional life. And so I flip that on its head. And I think that's breaking down for a lot of us in the Western world, at least. Like
mm,
our society operates on that patriarchal, that male energy cycle, and for females, we're on a very different energy cycle. And so learning to basically what a lot of people would call stepping out of the matrix, right? Like the
mm,
achievement uh, award system and the 24-hour productivity award system has really been a journey for me that I really love facilitating for others to be
mm,
able to say, like, I got to get off this hamster wheel. I can't, I like anxiety every day, panic attacks, overwhelm. Just it's too heavy to carry for the length of our lives. And we're realizing that more and more every day.
I love that. Yeah, because the thing is, a lot of us moved away from that rat race and that
Yes.
hamster wheel, right? And then we jumped into entrepreneurship or
Yeah.
business or whatever you want to label it as. And then oftentimes a lot of those people stay in that rat race. They're
Yes.
like they become their own tyrannic. boss. And
Yeah.
it's building, like you said, a business on sand, but it's like building a business with the illusion. It's like
Yeah.
so how social media creates an illusion of people's
Oh,
lives.
yes.
And when you're an energetic person as you are and I am, you can feel it, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't care you've got $1 million in the bank, but you
Yeah.
feel empty. And
Yeah.
so I could never, I mean, obviously I'm happy for people who've got massive wealth and
Yeah.
success and all that. That's not about that. It's I can feel when there's no energy in it, when there's no passion, and you're just doing it for the money. And
Yeah.
that's fine if that's what you love, but that's not what most people love, actually.
Hmm. Yeah. And doing it for the money and the look of it, right? A lot of the people are making claims online that aren't even valid. And so I think that you mentioned the comparisonitis aspect. So I think social media is brilliant. We right now, even just we're talking on other sides of the world through digital media, right? Like it's
Mm,
fascinating and it's within seconds. Like there's no delay even on this call. I find that so fascinating, like that we have found a way to bend time and space, right? In this physical reality. So it is so magical and yet it can be so manipulated online. So we have to have a level of awareness and consciousness to filter what's being put out. Because
mm,
when we then compare and measure our success by the terms of what's being presented online,
mm,
it's just a part, like you said, of the same rat race
mm.
morphed into something else. So I really appreciate what you're sharing.
Yeah, definitely. I always say I give it the scratch test, and if I scratch it and it smells like bullshit, it's probably bullshit.
I love it. Yes,
But
yes.
that just comes with age, and
Yeah,
I'm not an ageist in any way, but I've just been around quite a long time now, and I've been working for myself for over 10 years, and I've been a
yeah,
mom for almost 8 years. And I think when you've done a few years under your belt, even though we know time is just an illusion,
yeah,
it makes you a little bit more aware, doesn't it?
yeah,
And I think what you were talking about earlier is discernment. Like
yeah,
discernment is so important because
yeah,
people can make all types of claims now. And I think Facebook does an amazing job. It's an amazing platform
hmm,
to create such amazing opportunities. How we met, how we do this
yes,
podcast, like you said, but also just take things with a pinch of salt and just, you know, I think people believe most things at face value,
hmm,
and most of the time, everybody's going through their own little journeys as well, even the super successful people. So I always like to try and find a way on my own right now. And I know I'm
hmm,
not an advocate for the coaching industry. I'm
hmm,
like a coach who doesn't have a coach.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
probably the biggest hypocrite here, but
I get that.
but
It's
I
natural.
yeah, and I think what my biggest vision would be to transition people to become their own coach, and I think that would be an incredible world to live in.
Yeah,
It would just be incredible, like self-sustainability, um, and then coaching. And obviously,
yeah,
you'll still have people to help through their journeys, but learning the tools where you can just navigate yourself is just
yeah,
so empowering. Like,
yeah. I think that there's seasons because I usually have a coach or a mentor or a mastermind. Like I'm usually involved in some sort of community and accountability forum. And there's seasons where it's meant to not. Like I just listen, right? It's not all or nothing. It's some cocktail recipe of what works right now because what worked a year ago doesn't work right now. What I needed 3 years ago is not what I need right now. So there's been times that I've had business coaches, spiritual coaches, accountability groups. And so it looks different per season. And I think that that's something that people, starting out, it's great to have a coach because you're learning self-regulation, you're learning to listen to yourself. And I think that the most important thing, some integrity pieces for our listeners when considering a coach is I find what is important is that the coach is coaching, not necessarily advising.
Mm,
oft if you want a spiritual advisor, hire a spiritual advisor. If you want a financial advisor, hire a financial advisor. A coach is going to have you look inward, right? I like to tell people, I don't have your answers. I have the right questions that are going to pull your answers out of you. And I think that that's very important because as a coach, I'm not responsible for someone's results. I'm responsible for the accountability, the support, the guidance that's going to help you produce the results you want because it's your hands on the wheel of your life. And I
mm,
also find integrity around coaching to be hire someone further down the path that you see yourself on,
mm,
right? So if I have a goal to, build my business a certain way, I'm going to probably hire the person who's built a business in a similar way. If
mm,
I want to write and publish a book, I'm going to hire a writing or publishing coach or work with a publisher or something in that area. And so spiritual breakthroughs like the examples are endless, right? And there's coaches for every outcome at this point in
mm,
the world. And so and that's actually, I'm going to go on a bit of a coaching industry tangent because so there's, I think discernment is incredibly important because there are salespeople
mm,
calling themselves coaches,
mm,
and you need to be able to identify that. I've definitely I've hired in my 8 years of having coaches and mentors, I've hired one gal who was a better saleswoman than she was a coach. And I was like, dang it, she got me. However, it's okay to interview coaches or mentors and not hire them. It's okay to interview multiple coaches to consider for the season of life you're in, because, I like astrologers too as coaches or human design specialists at people as coaches and mentors. There's endless options. And I think the more you meet with people, the more you're going to get a real feel for who it like. It's not so much what they do, it's who they be, right?
mm,
And so I think that if someone were looking for that kind of guidance, that meeting with different people and asking questions about, or, sharing what your desired outcome is how you're going to be able to find someone that's the most aligned for you. Uh, Not just someone who makes you a bunch of promises or sticks you in a 12-step or, a 12-step program. That was a bad example, but like a 3-step system for, their ultimate equation for success may not work for you. And so it's like, do you really vibe with the coach themselves and maybe the program that they're offering?
mm. Yeah, definitely important. It's holistic as well.
Totally.
I've worked with people before who are brilliant at what they do, but their home life is just a total wreck. And I know that's a bit of a judgment and probably a bit
Yes,
unfair, but their home life will start seeping through sooner or later into you and your work and your energy. And this is something that I learned as well. Energy hygiene
totally.
is really, really important, and not many people understand it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, beautiful. I love this conversation,
Me too.
Abigail. So, how can people find you if they want to store your energy or find out more about you?
Totally. I think the quickest answer is my name, abigailgazda.com. That way, I like to say if you find me in one place, you can find me in any place, but I'm really active on Instagram. That's my favorite place to hang out. So I am Instagale on Instagram. And so it's fun to hang out there a lot. And I offer a lot. One of my goals is to offer coaching, transformational information anywhere for people at every budget. And so I have a ton of free content. I have my Hearts Unleashed podcast, which people can tune into. And then I have programs and products and services that are available. I have books at a very low cost. And then I have, in highly intensive programs where people can actually work with me as well. And then the last thing I'd like to say about that is I offer 30-minute complimentary discovery calls. And so if someone's really resonating and would love to connect and talk to me about what they're up to and what they're creating in life, you can email me, abigail@heartsunleashed.com, and you could just ask for a discovery call because I love doing those with people. I love meeting new folks.
Oh, that's beautiful. What we'll do, Abigail, is we'll make sure that your links and
Yeah.
that link that is including the podcast so people can easily find you and stalk you. I love using the word stalk. I'm trying to reduce the negative sting out of it from the collective. So every time I do a podcast, I always say stalk,
I
and
love
it's
it.
funny the reactions it gets, but I'm reducing the stinginess out of it the more I say it. Um, Beautiful. So, are there any kind of last minute messages or that you
Mm.
want to share with our audience before we wrap up?
I appreciate the opportunity, and we haven't talked about this, but I'd love to encourage any listener, wherever you are in your transformational journey or you're becoming cosmically you, infuse about 1,000 times more grace.
Mm,
I I I think we're all skilled at being hypercritical to some extent, but grace, infusing grace has been the most transformational part of my journey because I have a lot of knowledge, I have a lot of wisdom, and I'm sure and potential, and I know everybody listening does, but we usually impede that by being tough on ourselves. And so I offer more grace, more permission, and you will become cosmically you.
I love that. Yeah, my team are just saying, just add everything with a hint of softness.
Yes.
Just everything gets to be fun and effortless when we just
Yeah,
allow. Um, Even the stingy stuff, it doesn't have to, you don't have to stay with the stingy stuff for a long time. I love
totally.
that.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for being here. I love your energy. It's so soft and almost hypnotic. I like it.
Mm. Thank you. I appreciate that. I so appreciate getting to talk to you and to speak to your audience. I appreciate it.
Yeah, totally. So what we'll do is we'll circulate your links when we circulate the podcast. So
Thank you.
I'll just thank everybody here for watching, listening, and reading, and then we'll have a little chat if you've got 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, beautiful.